Shalom and welcome to the One Pasuk podcast, where the rabbis at Congregation Avas Torah each share an insight on one particular pasuk from the Parsha and reflect on each other's ideas. Rabbinic banter, I like to call it. I am Chaim Pupko, and I am joined by my dear friends and teammates, Rabbi Daniel Goldberg
Shalom.
And Rabbi Morty Jesus.
Shalom.
If you'd like to sponsor an upcoming episode, please contact the shul. All right, here we go.
באלוני ממרא זה לא היה מקרה שאברהם אבינו קנה חלקת אדמה והוא ידע שטוב עשה שתבוא לה השעה שעם ישראל שלו יהיה בשעת צרה חברון עיר האבות שלנו לדורי דורות מאז לעד ולתמיד לנצח נצחים.
Our one pasuk for this week, Parshas Chayei, the very first pasuk of the Parsha, Perek Chaf Gimel, pasuk Aleph, Vayihiyu Chayei Sarah Meyashana ve'esrim shana ve'sheva shanim shnei Chayei Sarah. The lifetime of Sarah was 127 years, the years of the life of Sarah. This comes a little bit out of nowhere. It's right after the Akedah. Sarah has passed away, and we are launched into a new story of Avraham acquiring the place where she will be buried. And it's introduced with this somewhat cryptic, somewhat poetic pasuk. So let's see what the rabbis have to say.
There's actually a cryptic midrash. The midrash says that one day Rabbi Akiva was giving class, and he noticed that the members of the shiur were starting to fall asleep. And so in order to wake them up, he decided to say somewhat of an outlandish idea that was going to jar them back to reality. And he said, do you know why Esther HaMalka merited 127 provinces in her reign? It was because Sarah Imenu lived 127 years. End of conversation. Doesn't elaborate, doesn't explain. We have no idea what he was talking about. What does that even mean? It's a connection between Sarah and Esther. Furthermore, why was that a way to wake them up? What was so astonishing about that statement, so jarring, that would have rocked them right back to reality? I heard a beautiful idea from Rabbi Diamond. He lived in Be Well, the Rosh Kollel in Deal, New Jersey. He explains as follows. The subject matter that they were studying was on the importance of asking yourself the question daily, Matai higiu ma'asai lema'aseh avotai. We are obligated every day to ask ourselves, when are our deeds going to match up to the deeds of our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov? Now, as he's giving this presentation, the students begin to think to themselves, it's ridiculous. You know when the answer is? You know when? Never. How in the world are we ever going to be great enough to ask ourselves, when are my actions going to be like the actions of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov? They're giants. It's impossible. And you know what his answer was? You know why Esther reached the level of being able to rule over 127 provinces? That was because she asked herself this question. Did she ever reach the level of Sarah Imenu? Never. Sarah Imenu was a bigger prophet than Abraham. But yet, she asked herself every day. And she became someone who was so great that Hashem said, because of your actions, you too can become someone who can rule over 127 provinces. Esther, it's your desire and your pursuit for what's right and for making sure that you're constantly developing your character was merited you to have this unbelievable zechut. And Rabbi Akiva was telling his students, as we study the subject, don't get dejected. Don't fall apart and say, you know what, this is a ridiculous question because the answer is never. No, I will be great one day because I have a framework of what I'm trying to aspire towards. Will I fall woefully short? Obviously. But at least I won't stay where I am. I'll constantly be growing and aspiring. And that was the motivation Rabbi Akiva was trying to give his students in this midrash.
It's a beautiful idea. You quoted it in the name of Rabbi Diamond, who I know has had a very big roshem on you. Maybe you could share with us a little bit about what he has meant to you in your life and your own striving as a model of a Talmid Chacham.
That's a very profound question. I think if I ever in this job have a question and I can't get in touch with Rabbi Diamond, which I often do, I ask him a lot of questions, I'll always really contemplate and think, what would Rabbi Diamond say? Because he was that type of dugma. He is one of the most loving, non-judgmental people. You know, a lot of people externally look at someone and say, oh, he's wearing a kippah sruga, he must have this hashkafa. He's wearing a black hat, he has that hashkafa. He's not wearing a kippah, he has another hashkafa. Rabbi Diamond never saw black, white colors. All he saw were Jews. And he pursued his whole life to ensure that he's elevating every one of these Jews. There's story upon story that has been a guiding principle for me. I'll just give you one, if I may.
Please.
So my father, alav shalom, was a student of Rabbi Diamond, and that's why in the Kassus house, Rabbi Diamond is the be-all, end-all because of his relationship with my dad. And of course, we grew up with him, and we heard him speak, and we understand what he means to the broader Kihila. But for our family, Rabbi Diamond has been a guiding force in our lives. I'll never forget, once my father told us the story many times. He was walking home from shul. And back then, not everybody was Shomer Shabbat in the Syrian community. And one day, he's walking home from shul, and he always used to tell the rabbis that were in his kollel, it's not your job to tell people how to live their lives. You give everybody space. If they're not Shomer Shabbat or they're going to work on Shabbat, it's not your job to tell them, you're going to burn in hell for that. How dare you? What are you thinking? He said one day, my dad was walking home from shul with him, and he saw somebody riding a bike. And that was before Deal had an Eruv. So it was 100% prohibited. And the guy was across the street. And Rabbi Diamond yells, Charlie, Shabbat Shalom, honey. That's how he talked. Everybody's honey to Rabbi Diamond. Honey! So my father was very surprised. He said, Rabbi, you taught us. He's sticking it into his face. He's riding a bike. You know he's not allowed to ride a bike. Why are you calling him out for it? So let me explain to you something. Last Shabbat morning, I was walking to shul, and he was driving a convertible. And he pulled up at the stop sign, and we locked eyes. And I was furious that I made eye contact with him because I was able to feel how embarrassed he felt. And it hurt me the whole week. It bothered me that I made him feel bad about it. When I saw him riding the bike, I understood that he felt bad enough that he got on the bike. I wanted to acknowledge, good job, Charlie. Good for you. You were able to understand that maybe there's a better way to do things without necessarily sticking it in his face. But Rabbi Diamond was telling my father and another rabbi who was there with him, that's a way of acknowledging a step in his process and showing him, are you allowed to ride a bike? Absolutely not. But it's better than a car. And Charlie, I want you to know I saw it.
Wow.
Because for him, he had that way about him, that ni'imut, that refined nature. And till this very day, I can't think of. Last night, we went to my niece, but my brother's grandson had a Pidyon Haben. And my wife said, you want to listen to a class or music? So I laughed. She's like, okay, I know. You want to listen to a class. Which one you want to put on? So put on Rabbi Diamond. The whole way, all the way to Lakewood, hour and 10 minutes, listen to a class from Rabbi Diamond. Because he's constantly refining the way we think and the way you see and view life. But in a nutshell, he was one of the most accepting and inspiring personalities just by the way he lived his life.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, I've always felt the mark of a true gadol is someone who knows how to maintain a certain standard, uncompromising, and connect with people in a way that's non-judgmental and that's sophisticated and recognizes that something is better than nothing, and people are on a journey, and I really think that's the key to our generation. And maybe in previous generations, a little bit more black and white made sense, but that's our generation.
We could not have summed them up better, and I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right.
And it's reminiscent of, it echoes the Medrash about Aharon HaKohen, who would be so warm to so many people, and wherever they were in their own religious lives, they would feel that if Aaron thinks so highly of me, if Aaron HaKohen is so dear and so thinks so highly of me, then I need to that creates a positive pressure to advance and to grow and to develop. Really beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I'll share a slightly different idea. The pasuk, of course, when it presents Sarah Imenu's age, so it says Mea Shana, 100 years, and 20 years, and 7 years, and Rashi cites the Medrash that it breaks up her age in that way to indicate that something of her, at 100, her sin was like that of a 20-year-old. At 20, her beauty, her youthfulness was still like that of a 7-year-old. There are other versions of the Medrash that might switch around the sin and the beauty, and but the idea is that at each stage she was like in the previous stage in a certain sense. Rosh Hashanah Hirsch offers a slight variation on that idea, or maybe an expansion on it. He offers the following reflection: that in life we have stages. So 7 is like the quintessential child, 20 is that like entering adulthood, and 100 is the fullness of age. And we have different stages in our lives which are marked by different qualities. And we make the mistake of thinking that at every stage we kind of park youthfulness, and then we enter into this middle stage of our life, and then we park that and we enter the wisdom and the fullness of age. But the ideal is that in every stage we take the best of the qualities of that experience, and we bring it with us into the next stage, and we accumulate it, right? The language in the Torah very often when someone passes away is ba bayamim, which he says that he comes, I'm quoting, he comes home with his days. What does that mean? Is that his days are not in the past. It's that every stage he brings it with him. He brought with him all the experiences and all of the qualities of his youthfulness and the middle stage, etc. And I think that's such a powerful idea for us, that we have a certain youthful innocence and curiosity as children. And the goal is to bring that with us, and not to become, even as we age, not to become skeptical and cynical. And we have, you see young men and women coming back from Israel, and they're on fire, and they're so growth oriented, and they're looking, they have these great role models, and they want to be like them. And sometimes with age and with wisdom and life, there comes a skepticism and a sense of limitation that we have, that's coupled with the wisdom that is hard won and that we celebrate. But the goal is to try and preserve a little bit of that innocence, and to preserve the ambitiousness and the sense of growth from our younger age, and to bring it with us, and to try and continue to cultivate those things, and not let the wisdom of life and the things that come with age extinguish those beautiful qualities that are characteristic of our younger years.
It's such a beautiful idea, and I'm curious, I wonder, an exercise we could apply that idea to Shlomo HaMelech and the Medrash, which talks about how Shlomo HaMelech composed Shir HaShirim in his youthful days when he was more idealistic and romantic, and then Mishlei when he's a little more sobered, and Koheles later in life when he's more cynical. Why didn't he bring Shir HaShirim all the way through to...
But it's a machlokes, right? That's the beauty of that Medrash, the machlokes. The other Man Da'amar says he wrote them all at the same time.
Beautiful.
And so I think it's actually,
Excellent.
I think that's such a magnificent connection. There are stages in life, yes, but the goal is actually to carry all of them at once.
Beautiful. So what I wanted to talk about, I actually wanted to take a different perspective on the pasuk, a little bit more of like a process or literary perspective, because I always find it fascinating when the Torah just lapses into poetry, where it's telling a story, a narrative, and then a pasuk or several psukim come across as poetically composed. And that's how I see this pasuk, because it's so elaborate in separating out the years, and it comes out of nowhere. Vayihiyu Chayei Sarah. It was the life of Sarah. Meya Shana, Esrim Shana, Sheva Shanim, Shnei Chayei Sarah. And the fact that it would repeat also gives it that poetic quality. And I believe that this pasuk is trying to grab our attention and make sure that we continue to study the life of Sarah. That it's easy to just look at Sarah as a subordinate, a supporting actor to Avraham. Avraham is the great hero of monotheism. But even at the beginning of their story together, the Rav points out, Es hanefesh asu b'charan, they were true partners in everything that they did. And Sarah is the kind of life that has to be studied to appreciate her accomplishments and what we can learn from her. If you just look at the surface and everything with Hagar and her laughing, you won't really capture her entire greatness. And so at the time of her passing, before it says that she passed away, Vatama Sarah, I believe this poetic pasuk is coming to say, you need to consider this life. And all the lessons that we've heard on this podcast and many others, the lessons of Meya Shana and Esrim Shana and Sheva Shanim, all of that, these lives are meant to be studied. And I know we've all experienced times when we've met people and we thought we knew them, and then we learned something else about them. We learned something deeper, something we didn't know, and it just deepens our appreciation. And that's what we're supposed to do for Sarah.
That's incredibly important, especially as it reflects to our interactions with others. I'll never forget, Rabbi Kalish once said that if we'd be willing to sit down with a producer who was interested in making a movie out of our life, every one of them would be a blockbuster hit. If we're willing to acknowledge that our stories are so unique and so full, and there's so many components to it that are intriguing and inspiring and give us perspective on why we do what we do and how we do what we do, we would be blown away by the people that we meet. And so it's always incumbent upon us to really dive in and get to know people better, understand things better, because what you see on the surface is never the true person. There's so much depth and nuance and so many things that it's important to get to know that person on a deeper level. And then and only then could you appreciate Shnei Chayei Sarah, the individual, who this person is, what they represent. So
I think you taught me a new perspective on a familiar idea from Chazal when they say, every person is like a Sefer Torah. Every person embodies layers of meaning. They're endowed with an neshama from the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and they have that sanctity, and that's a sanctity that can be plumed and explored just like the Torah.
And in fact, at a funeral, we make the same Kaddish. The only two times we say the Kaddish is at a funeral and at a Siyam Masechet. The idea that a person's life is a kind of a Masechta. I'll just, as a marmakom, maybe for the outro, so there's a beautiful song from Hanan ben Ari, and the refrain, the chorus is Gam ani cholem kmo Yosef. I too
love that song.
Dream like Yosef. V'gam oti zarku labor. I too was thrown into a pit, and it's all these biblical references, and it says that everyone's life is chomer tov laseret, is good material for a movie. So it's exactly the point that we're hitting on here. So I recommend the song. And it hits on this exact, very profound idea.
Well said.
We're definitely putting it in the outro. Have a great Shabbos.
מגורש מגן עדן, כל אחד עובר מבול, לכל אחד יש איזה הבל שהוא מקנא בו עד מוות, בכל אחת מגדל של מרד ובלבול. כל אדם הולך לו מבית אבא, עמוק בפנים יש סדום קטנה שהוא רק רוצה למחוק כבר, ויש מלאכים שימלטו אותו. וגם אני חולם כמו יוסף, כן גם אותי זרקו לבור, גלגל חוזר בתוך תחפושת, וכמו דוד אני עושה מזה מזמור, עושה מזה מזמור.